"Come on," said Billy Joe Jacks. "The money's not gone, but nobody's been guarding the turkeys." They slipped down out to the barn and peeked in a window. The big red barn was empty. "The turkey's gone," said the chief of police when Billy Joe Jacks walked in. "What? The turkeys are gone," said Billy Joe Jacks. "Huh?" said the chief of police. "The turkeys are missing." "Huh?" "The turkeys," said Billy Joe Jacks. "The turkeys that were kept in the barn. The Latin name is Meleagris Galapavo. They are no longer in the barn. They are what the bandits have stolen." "That's ridiculous," said the chief of police. "They probably just wandered out an open door or something into one of the fields." "It's not as ridiculous as one might think, sir," said Billy Joe Jacks. "A lot of people who are expecting a turkey this year will be awfully sad and maybe upset when Farmer Brown and the Hoedown loggers have no turkeys to give." "It is preposterous," piped up Josiah. "Who would swipe a bunch of turkeys?" "A crop," said Billy Joe Jacks. "Eh?" said the chief of police. "A crop," said Billy Joe Jacks. "A bunch of turkeys is called a crop. A bunch of worms is called a bunch. Also a bed, or a craw." "A craw?" said the chief of police. "Yes, sir. And a crop of turkeys, also called a dole of turkeys, or a raffle of turkeys, or a posse of turkeys, or a gang of turkeys." "I prefer posse, sir. I'd like to have one of my own one day." "What's that?" said the chief of police, who always seemed a little hard of hearing. "A posse, sir." "A posse?" "My own posse of turkeys." The chief of police just stared at Billy Joe Jacks, blinking, not really sure what to do with that information, and not really sure why anyone would want to walk around with a posse of turkeys. Farmer Brown, the chief of police, and the two deputies walked out to the big red barn, Billy Joe Jacks and Josiah walking right along behind him. Farmer Brown unlocked the big barn door and slid it open. Sure enough, the barn was empty. Not a peep or a gobble. The chief of police marched in and eyed all around inside of the barn, sweeping his flashlight back and forth. "Hey, the door was locked from the outside," he announced. "Either the bandits had a key or they took them out another way." He scratched his head, looking at Farmer Brown. "How do you think they got out?" All the windows in the barn were closed, everyone noticed, but Billy Joe Jacks was standing there looking at one in particular. "Defenestration," he said. "Eh?" said the chief of police. "Defenestration," said Billy Joe Jacks. He pointed to the window that he was staring at. "They went out the window. Defenestration." Josiah piped up, "The act of leaving a building or a car by going out a window. Defenestration." By this time, Billy Joe Jacks had walked over to the window and was looking intently at a spot outside, about 50 feet away. Uh-oh, I just lost my place. "Chief?" The chief of police said, "Kids, it's time for you to get out of here. This is a crime scene. We've got to take photos, question Farmer Brown, check out the lumberjacks." Billy Joe Jacks and Josiah just wandered outside. Josiah was trailing a little bit after Billy Joe Jacks and seemed kind of disappointed, even though Billy Joe Jacks seemed like he had some place to go. "Oh man," said Josiah, "I wish we could have stayed. I bet you could have solved that case." "No," said Billy Joe Jacks, "it was certainly time to leave. Look," he said, pointing to a spot at the end of the gravel driveway. "The trail of poo, the same poo that was covering the windowsill inside the barn, goes all the way out to where that gravel driveway starts, and then, presto," he said, "no more poo. It's as if the poo disappeared." He smiled at Josiah. "Well," Josiah said, "that means somebody took them." "Precisely," said Billy Joe Jacks. "If the Farmer Brown has until noon tomorrow for the bandits to get their money and give the turkeys back, they can't have taken the turkeys too far. I mean, 10,000 pounds of turkey? That's a lot of turkey," said Billy Joe Jacks, guesstimating that with, say, it could be 300 or maybe 350 turkeys, maybe somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds of turkey. He scratched his head, trying to do the math. I wonder how much you could buy those turkeys in the store for. It's 79 cents a pound." But then Josiah interrupted his thoughts. "Well, I guess we better get on our bikes and see if we can pick where that path of poo takes us." Billy Joe Jacks laughed. "You mean where the bunch of bowel movement belongs?" Both boys laughed. "Where the dollop of dingleberries is dumped," shouted Josiah. "Yes," said Billy Joe Jacks. "Where they went is what the ton of turkey trots will tell us." The boys giggled themselves until they hopped on their bike and began to bike to Billy Joe Jack's house. Josiah said, "We'll have to go down every street in the county." If they went down a driveway or a path before unloading the turkeys. But Billy Joe Jacks piped up. "No, I have an idea," he said. "Farmer Brown's lumberjack hoedown happened every year, and every year they brought out a mascot into the middle of the event field. That mascot every year is named Tom the Turkey. It's a big 30-pound brown turkey that was proud of his job, and this year Billy Joe Jack saw him sitting on the top of a pile of hay bales right in the middle of the field, watching all the axe throwing and pole climbing with the eye of a king watching his knights having contests with each other." Well, all they did is walk into Farmer Brown's office. "Mr. Brown," said Billy Joe Jacks, "can we borrow Tom the Turkey? We'd like to take some photos. Since all your turkeys look alike, we can put up posters all over town. I'm sure that'll be of some help to you." Farmer Brown didn't look so sure, but the chief of police piped up. "It'll give these kids something to do and stay out of our hair," he said. So Farmer Brown gave his consent, and off the boys went. They raced home to Billy Joe Jack's house, grabbed their bikes, and hooked up the wagon to Billy Joe Jack's bike. Billy Joe Jacks set a cage onto it, and explaining to Josiah what he was going to do, they climbed onto their bikes, and then, "Dude," said Fuzzy, "there is no way we are not going on this adventure." Splat paused from licking his butt. "Yes," said Splat, "besides, cats have way better hearing than people, and besides, who doesn't want to go on a turkey hunt?" So off they all went. Tom the Turkey had no problem walking down the hay bales to the cage Billy Joe Jacks set down on the ground. A small pile of grapes, smelling like the perfect late morning snack, was piled in the middle of the cage. "Tom is a boy, of course," said Billy Joe Jacks, picking up the cage and strapping it to the wagon that he pulled behind his bike. "But besides his name," Billy Joe Jacks explained as the two boys rode off, "a male turkey is called a tom." "What's a girl turkey called?" asked Josiah. "A hen," said Billy Joe Jacks, "and we don't have to go down every road or path or alley." "Nope, not at all," said Billy Joe Jacks. "You see, turkeys are highly social, intelligent, and affectionate creatures. They like being in groups. They like each other. They have a highly developed social order. For example, when a boy turkey is born, somewhere in the first year of its life, it gets into these long 2-hour fights with the other boy turkeys. The winner of each fight gets to be in charge of the loser of each fight just for life, kind of like an older brother picks on a younger brother, or a dominant dog is in charge of all the lesser dogs." "The alpha dog," said Josiah. "Exactly," said Billy Joe Jacks. "Now Tom Turkey was obviously the best fighter of the flock, because he is the turkey that's in charge. And every turkey has their own distinctive voice, unlike any other turkey, so they have no trouble recognizing each other's voices. And since a turkey gobble can travel 1 whole mile..." "Genius!" Josiah interrupted. "Exactly," said Billy Joe Jacks. "I read all the time. I picked up this some time ago, and you know, I never thought it'd come in handy, but today it does." The boys biked around, and every once in a while one would announce loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Turkey!" And Tom the Turkey, hearing his name announced, would stand up and gobble, "Gobble, gobble, 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 looking around after each one as if he had just said something really important. Tom the Turkey was an awfully proud turkey. The boys would pause their talking for a moment and listen for any answering turkey gobbles. Sooner or later they figured they'd hear the flock. Biking down one of the last country roads that led out of town, Billy Joe Jacks was explaining, "The snood is the flap of the skin that hangs down over the beak." "It's ugly," said Josiah. It's like they're eating a worm and forgot, and it just dangles there." "Yeah," said Billy Joe Jacks. "The wattle is that big fleshy thing that hangs underneath the throat. But the really cool thing is turkeys and chickens and other kinds of birds, they swallow small stones, and the stones go down into their belly, into an area called the gizzard, and when they swallow food, the stones help grind it up." "Huh," said Josiah. "Sometimes I get the irps. Might be handy if I swallowed a few stones." "Well, maybe," said Billy Joe Jacks. "Maybe not." "No kidding, Billy Joe Jacks. A turkey gender can be determined by its droppings. If you're a boy turkey, you make little spiral-shaped poop. And if you're a female girl turkey, your poop is shaped like the letter J. Ben Franklin wanted the turkey to be the national bird instead of the English eagle, which is kind of funny because Ben Franklin kind of looks like a turkey. I mean, they could have been separated at birth. Both of the boys laughed a little bit. But just then they heard a cacophony of birds, a whole bunch of gobbles. Off down a driveway to the right, just over a small wooded hill. Gobble. Josiah quickly jumped off his bike and put a bag over Tom the turkey's head to keep him quiet. Birds like that, they won't gobble or make a noise if there's a bag over their head. They think it's night, and they actually just go to sleep. The boys jumped off their bikes, and the cats guarded the cage and the bikes as they hid them in the bushes. And the boys snuck up the trail and eventually came to a small cabin. Smoke was coming out of the top. There was a small woodshed next to it, and behind both was a large field fenced off, full of trees. And underneath the trees, "The posse," whispered Josiah. There were turkeys everywhere. Turkeys underneath, turkeys all around. A trail of poo picked up next to the cabin and went right down to the field and through the fence where the gate was. All around, underneath the trees, the birds pecked at the ground. "Shut up, birds!" shouted a man with a gun, waving it at the gang of turkeys. "They must have seen something they didn't like," he said, calling to the other man who was leaning in the doorway of the cabin. Both men stood and looked at the turkeys for a moment and then went back inside, closing the door. "What are we going to do?" said Josiah. "We have to get these turkeys somehow," said Billy Joe Jacks. He thought for a moment, scratching his head. "I got it! Leroy Brown!" And the boys went back and got Tom the turkey, Splat and Fuzzy the wagon, and they biked off to Leroy Brown's junkyard.